Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my course, Worldview Studies. So let me share my PPT again. And I want to summarize what I have done last time. So last time I have shared the strong and weak points of Hinduism. As for the strong points of Hinduism, first of all, I said Hinduism is very tolerant of other religions. So it is not aggressive, but very peaceful. Secondly, Hinduism seeks a moral life. For instance, they do not kill cows, and most of them are vegetarians because of their belief in karma. Thirdly, and finally, I mentioned that Hinduism developed various pieces of arts like Taj Mahal and many other beautiful temples and many other works of art. But there are some weak points as well. And first of all, I mentioned the caste system created social inequalities. There are basically four, but actually five different classes, and that is a very big problem. Second, the idea of karma leads people to fall into fatalistic determinism. So if you are born as a Sudra class, then you just give up and you don't want to change anything. Thirdly, Hinduism is a very religious syncretism, and they want to include all kinds of religions, and they want to admit everything, but that means they are not clear. Fourthly, historical consciousness and morality are easily taken out of the picture. And then fifth, the moral standard is very relative and is kind of escapism. And the final weak point, I said that we can point out that Hinduism is monotheism within polytheism, but that is very inconsistent. So, what can we say about these weak points? What can we offer any other alternatives? Let me try to explain. Number one, but let me mention this first. Previously, we have discussed about naturalism and have seen that naturalism does not acknowledge any supernatural or spiritual aspect of life, and so could not address spiritual value in any meaningful way. If naturalism is the truth, then the world would only be of matter, and there would be nothing spiritual or non-material in the world. However, in our lives, there are many spiritual phenomena that transcend matter, and people often give up material value for a higher purpose. If men are only made up of physical and chemical materials, then how can we evaluate the spiritual value of man? And therefore, there are two worldviews that are exactly at the opposite of this kind of naturalism. One is the recently trending New Age worldview, and the other is the biblical worldview. New Age is actually a worldview that came from this Hinduism because they see the world as spiritual and as one, and this one and is the opposite of naturalism, which sees the essence of the world as matter and it absolutizes the spiritual realm. Therefore, this is also called non-naturalism. In this sense, Hinduism is similar to this worldview. And therefore, if we see this in the opposite way, we can also say that Hinduism stresses the spiritual aspect too much, that it sometimes neglects the material aspect of the world. And I think we need a balance between the two. And in this sense, the biblical perspective stresses both dimensions in a good balance. And this worldview sees human beings as created in the image of God, and human being has genuine free will, and the body, mind, and spiritual aspects are all acknowledged. However, there is a clear boundary between the Creator and man. Man is a limited being and cannot become God at all. Although there are godly aspects such as the understanding of eternity and self-transcendence, man cannot be God. Instead, the biblical worldview sees the human being as the greatest creature among creatures and as a steward responsible to take care of the world for the Creator. Also, it states that one soul is more precious than the whole world. This clearly shows the value and dignity that a person has. And this is the alternative to the first weak point of Hinduism, meaning all human beings are equal. If the caste system is legally abolished, but still socially and culturally maintained, this would lead to a harder integration of the society and will be manipulated by the political powers. Therefore, this system lacks social morality of universal validity, especially the notion that the Brahman caste is closer to God is a class soteriology, which is not in code with the modern democracy that seeks an equal society. And therefore, Gautama Siddhartha, the founder of Buddhism, who tried to reform Hinduism, naturally got rid of this caste system. If the Hinduism worldview is to stress the unity of Atman and Brahman, then there should be no caste and discrimination among the Atman. In the biblical perspective, all men are created equal in the image of God and in Christ. They are all brothers and sisters So there should be no discrimination and basic human rights and dignity and should be acknowledged. Furthermore, not only caste discrimination, but also equality between man and woman should be emphasized. So, let me move on to the second point. Hinduism's karma worldview leads people to fall into fatalistic determinism. But to this, human free will and responsibility should be stressed. Karma is also present in Buddhism and is very similar to the biblical worldviews you reap what you sow principle. However, the difference is that in Hinduism, it is the way to salvation, while in the biblical worldview, it is the result of salvation in which one does good deeds. So, in other words, in the biblical perspective, you do good works because you are already saved. Whereas in Buddhism or Hinduism, you do good works in order to be saved. Well, that's a big difference, isn't it? And this means that in the former, one is never sure how much good deed is necessary to be born in a good state and to be saved later. Whereas in the biblical perspective, salvation is already received by Christ because of his redemptive work. So good deeds are naturally practiced as an appreciation of salvation that we have already received. In Hinduism, karma, samsara, and moksha are interrelated, as you understand, as you see. If we see karma positively, it stresses that we need to live in the right way. However, when this is related to the concept of reincarnation, where the past life's karma leads to the kind of entity that one is going to be born into, leads to the acceptance of one's present state as fate and even confronting social injustice. One tends to accept it passively rather than actively seeking reformation. On the other hand, if we have only one life in this world and must be responsible for it after death at the final judgment, then one would live more seriously and would try to reform the world. Furthermore, the moksha that Hinduism mentions is very vague, and no one can be sure that he or she will achieve it. It means that one does not know how much good deeds one needs to do to achieve this. So this uncertainty can lead to worries in life and even frustration. On the other hand, in the biblical worldview, salvation by faith is guaranteed by the Holy Spirit. So people do good deeds out of gratitude. Perhaps the reason why India was governed by Britain for so long can be found in the worldview which they had. Third, on the weak point of religious syncretism, a more consistent worldview is needed. The three gods of Hinduism have some similarities to the triune God of Christianity I mentioned, but they are different because Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are three different gods and cannot be one. And since there are so many gods, they conflict with each other in their ideas, and even if they are tolerant of each other, inner conflict is inevitable. This can be seen in New Age as well. However, in Buddhism, these three gods disappear. And in the biblical worldview, a clear spiritual and moral standard, like the Ten Commandments, is given. Fourth, as an alternative to the lack of historical consciousness and morality, a change from the circular view of history is needed in order to prepare creatively for the future. Reincarnation sees the world as going round and round, and this can be seen in Buddhism and New Age as well. If so, new creative thinking cannot be easily produced. If creative innovation is not achieved, a society or country cannot develop easily. On the other hand, the people in power would want to keep the existing system, so the society would become more and more conservative. If we compare, for instance, Nepal and Switzerland, we can see a clear difference, I think. These countries have Himalayas and the Alps, respectively, as worldwide tourist attractions. However, Nepal has poor infrastructure countrywide, and to climb the mountain, one needs to find a Sherpa or helper and climb the mountain one step at a time. On the other hand, Switzerland has invested in a traffic network and social overhead capital facilities from 150 years ago. Also, in a famous spot in the Alps is created a cogwheel railway, so visitors from around the world keep coming. This is the result of difference in worldview, I think. Even Nepal is bigger than Switzerland in terms of the whole land is 3 times bigger. But in terms of infrastructure, it's radically different. I think that is the result of different worldview. Because Nepal is influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism, whereas Switzerland is shaped by the worldview of Reformation, especially. And regarding morality, if human ignorance is the only sin, then it is hard to ask for responsibility to the person who did wrong. However, everyone has a conscience, and when we do something wrong, such as lying, stealing from others, or killing someone, we intuitively know that these actions are wrong. And therefore, everyone needs to take full responsibility for their actions. Countries with a worldview that has a clear morality have lower corruption levels. If not, chances are that the government is like to be as corrupt. Fifth, for the weak point that Hinduism's moral standard is very relativistic and is escapist, there needs to be an absolute standard for our moral life. If not, everyone's standard would be different, and it leads to a moral relativism. Then this leads to the tendency to rationalize one's behavior. The Hinduism worldview created gods out of human needs, so this kind of conclusion might be inevitable. However, when a clear and absolute guideline is presented, a transparent society is able to be formed, and such a society would develop further. Finally, an alternative can be considered to Hinduism's inner self contradiction of polytheism and monotheism coexisting. Serving only a god and many other gods at the same time is a contradiction, and this would lead to conflict among gods. Being tolerant of all gods sounds good, but in depth, Hinduism is neither this nor that, but a very mixed worldview. The fact that there are so many gods shows that these gods are nothing more than human projections. On this, we need a clearer worldview as an alternative. So my conclusion is as follows. Up until now, we have looked at the worldview of Hinduism. And we started from the historical background to the main contents and learned about the main thinkers. And after that, we looked at the strong points and weak points of Hinduism from various perspectives. Then we have looked at the possible alternatives to those weak points of this worldview. The next lecture, we will learn in detail about the Buddhist worldview, which was started by Buddha Gautama Siddhartha to reform this Hinduism. And these are the references that I have consulted. Again, you have here the contact info and further explanations. Thank you for your attention, and we will see you next time.